Welcome to Byte-Sized Tech, the show where we like to kind of break down what's going on with tech and gadgets and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, kind of the need to know without the information overload.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've got a busy life. You don't need to be
Yeah.
neck deep in all the technical stuff, but you want to know what matters.
Right, exactly. Just kind of like the key takeaways and what it really means for like the average person using technology.
So this week there was a lot going on, and we're going to focus mostly on some security stuff that really kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, there were some big stories this week for sure.
Yeah, and one of the first things I wanted to touch on, a lot of people who listen might not be developers themselves,
Right.
but they probably use websites that were built with tools that developers use.
Of course. Yeah. Makes sense.
And one of them is called Next.js.
Yeah.
It's a JavaScript framework that a lot of developers use to build, pretty popular websites and web apps.
Yeah.
And researchers Enzo and Zero found a pretty serious vulnerability in it.
Yeah.
It scored a 9.1 on the CVSS scale, which is like, that's high. That's
significant.
That's red flag territory. And officially, it's CVE 2025-29927 if you want to look it up.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that people hear vulnerability and they're like, oh my gosh, what does this mean?
That sounds scary.
So this one, it's basically, it boils down to manipulating certain headers.
Right.
In a web request to bypass authorization.
That's exactly. So, authorization, like when you log into a website and you're only supposed to see certain things or access certain features,
right?
This vulnerability would allow someone to potentially get around those restrictions.
And the report even said that you just needed a basic understanding of a tool called Burp Suite, which a lot of developers use. I don't know. It's kind of like knowing how to use a screwdriver. It's like a basic.
Yeah, a common tool.
So, and they were able to do a few things with that. So not only could they bypass that authorization that we were talking about, but they could also mess with something called the Content Security Policy, or CSP.
Right. CSP is basically like a set of rules that a website can define to say like, okay, my website is only allowed to load scripts or images from these trusted sources.
Yep.
And it's a really important security mechanism to prevent malicious code from being injected into a website.
Like if you went to a website and it was suddenly loading a script from some shady server somewhere that's not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
CSP helps prevent that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So being able to bypass CSP is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and on top of that, they were able to launch denial of service attacks by messing with the website's cache.
Oh, wow. So a triple whammy.
Yeah, it was like a serious vulnerability.
And the thing is, Next.js is so widely used that the potential impact is huge.
Oh, yeah. And Census, they actually identified over 400,000 instances.
Wow.
That could be vulnerable to this attack. So,
Yes.
it's a big deal, and it kind of makes you realize, how much we rely on this underlying software.
Right. That's all interconnected.
That we don't even really think about.
Yeah, you don't see it.
But the good news is there's a patch available.
Oh, good. Okay.
So if you are using Next.js version 11 or higher, you need to update as soon as possible.
Definitely.
And Vercel, which is the company behind Next.js, they said that if you were using their XJS platform, you already had some protections in place.
Oh, that's interesting.
So at least that's something, right?
Yeah, that's good to hear. It shows that, platform-level security measures can be effective.
But it also highlights that, you can't just rely on somebody else to always have those protections in place.
Right. You still need to take responsibility for your own applications and make sure things are up to date.
Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit now and talk about something completely different, but also very impactful in the tech security world. Google just acquired a company called Wiz.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
For a whopping $3.2 billion in cash.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you wonder, what's so special about this company?
Right, what are they seeing in Wiz?
And I think it really signals just how important cloud security has become.
Yeah, everybody's moving to the cloud these days, so it's a prime target.
And it's interesting because it wasn't actually Google's first attempt to buy them.
Really?
Yeah, back in the summer of 2024, they reportedly offered $2.3 billion. But Wiz turned it down.
Wow, so they really had to up the ante.
Yeah, and that extra $1 billion kind of tells you how much Google believes in this company and their technology.
Yeah, it's a big statement.
So what does Wiz actually do? Well, they're a cloud security company, and they have a platform that helps you secure your cloud environments.
Okay, so like if you're using AWS or Google Cloud or Azure,
Mm-hmm.
they can help you identify and manage security risks across all of those.
Exactly. And the rumor is that Google is going to integrate Wiz into their Google Cloud Platform, which is their cloud offering. So, immediately they're going to have this kind of like top-tier security solution built right in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not actually the first time Google has acquired a security company. Like back in 2022, they bought Mandiant for $5.4 billion,
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
which is a huge cybersecurity firm. But they've kind of let Mandiant operate independently under their parent company, Alphabet.
I wonder if they'll take a similar approach with Wiz or if it'll be more tightly integrated.
That's a good question, and it's something to kind of watch and see how it plays out.
Yeah.
But when you think about the scale of this acquisition,
Yeah.
Google Cloud is estimated to bring in about $43 billion in revenue in 2024.
Yeah.
So spending $3.2 billion on Wiz is a pretty significant chunk of that, almost 7.5%.
That's a big bet.
It really is.
Yeah.
So it makes you think, like, what is their long-term game plan here? What are they hoping to gain?
I mean, it could be a few things, right? They could be looking to differentiate themselves from other cloud providers like AWS and Azure
Right.
by offering superior security capabilities.
Makes sense.
Because security is a huge concern for businesses these days, especially when you're talking about the cloud.
Yeah, and if Google can position themselves as the most secure cloud provider, that could give them a real competitive edge.
Absolutely. It could be a major selling point for customers who are really concerned about protecting their data.
Okay, so moving on, we've got another pretty significant security vulnerability to talk about.
Well, there's more.
Yeah, this one affects the Ingress EngineX controller for Kubernetes.
Kubernetes. That's a big one.
Yeah, a lot of people are using Kubernetes these days.
It's becoming the standard for container orchestration.
Yeah, and this vulnerability actually scores even higher than the Next.js one. It got a 9.8 out of 10.
Wow, that's critical.
And what made it even worse is that when this story first came out, there weren't any patches available.
Oh no, so everyone was just exposed.
Yeah, it was a really bad situation. And the story actually broke on Hacker News.
I saw that thread.
Yeah. And there was a post that listed 5 new critical vulnerabilities in this Ingress EngineX controller.
Yikes.
And it's interesting because Wiz was actually credited with discovering these vulnerabilities.
Oh, so they were the ones who found it.
Yeah, even though their full technical blog post wasn't out yet.
So this is kind of how vulnerability disclosure works sometimes, right? Researchers will find a vulnerability and then they'll give the vendor some time to develop a patch before they go public with the detail.
Right, so that everyone's not just, suddenly vulnerable.
Exactly. It's a responsible way to handle it.
But yeah, in this case, it seems like maybe the information leaked out a little bit early before the official embargo was lifted.
It happens.
Yeah, and the good news is that as of March 24th, they were actively working on patches and releases.
Okay, so hopefully by the time people are listening to this, those patches will be available.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
But these 5 vulnerabilities, they've been given the name Ingress Nightmare.
Oh, catchy.
Yeah, I don't know if it's reassuring or terrifying.
Right, it does sound a little ominous.
But basically, they're all unauthenticated remote code execution vulnerabilities, which means that an attacker could potentially execute arbitrary code on the affected systems.
That's never good.
And the specific CVEs are CVE 2045, 24513, 245, 24513, CVE 2025 1097, CVE 2025 1098, and CVE 2025 1974.
Okay, so a whole cluster of them.
Yeah, and they all reside in something called the configuration validation phase of the Ingress EngineX admission controller.
So basically, when traffic comes into your Kubernetes cluster, the Ingress controller is like the gatekeeper.
Right.
It decides where to send that traffic based on a set of rules.
Yeah.
And the admission controller is the part that's supposed to make sure those rules are valid and safe.
Like it checks the instructions before it actually does anything.
Exactly. But in this case, the vulnerabilities allowed attackers to craft malicious rules.
So it's like sneaking something past the bouncer.
Yeah, kind of. And when the admission controller tries to validate these malicious rules, it actually ends up injecting attacker-controlled code into the system.
Oh, wow. So it's like the bouncer accidentally let the bad guy in and gave him the keys to the place?
Basically, and this gives the attacker control over the Ingress controller's pod, which is like the underlying system that's running everything.
So they basically have control over the entry point to your entire Kubernetes cluster.
Exactly, and that's a really dangerous position to be in.
So how many people are potentially affected by this?
Well, Wiz estimates that about 43% of cloud environments that use Kubernetes could be vulnerable.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and they found over 6,500 vulnerable environments in their research.
So it's a widespread issue.
It is, and they're planning to release a more detailed technical blog post about it soon, so we'll probably get more information then.
Okay, so last but not least, let's talk about one more security incident that happened this week.
Okay.
This one involves a GitHub action called TJ Actions Changed Files.
I've heard of GitHub Actions.
Yeah, they're basically like little pre-built scripts that you can use to automate tasks in your software development workflow.
So it's like a way to make things more efficient.
Exactly. And this particular action changed files is very popular. In fact, at the time of this research, it was being used in over 23,000 repositories.
Wow, that's a lot.
So a lot of people were potentially affected by this.
Yeah.
And the issue here is that the action was compromised.
Oh, no.
And it started publishing sensitive CI/CD secrets in the build logs.
So CI/CD, that's continuous integration and continuous delivery?
Right. It's basically the process of automatically building and deploying software.
Yeah, and those secrets are like the keys to the kingdom, right?
Exactly. There are things like API keys, access tokens, all the stuff that you need to access different systems and services.
And if those are leaked, it's a major security breach.
And the thing is, sometimes those build logs are publicly accessible.
Oh, no.
So anybody could have potentially seen these secrets.
That's a nightmare scenario.
Yeah. And this all happened over just 2 days, March 14th and 15th.
So a very short window.
But still, a lot of damage could have been done.
Definitely.
So how did this compromise actually happen?
Well, it seems like the attackers were able to get their hands on a personal access token belonging to a bot account.
Okay.
And that bot account had permissions to make changes to the GitHub action.
So once they had that token, they were able to slip in some malicious code.
Exactly.
And they even updated the release tags so that people who were using the action would automatically get the compromised version.
Very sneaky.
Yeah, and the code itself was actually kind of hidden. It was B64 encoded.
B64 encoded.
Yeah, it's basically a way to represent binary data as a string of text. And it's often used to encode data for transmission or storage,
Right.
but it's not really encryption.
Right.
So anyone who knew what they were looking at could have decoded it.
And what did the decoded code actually do?
Well, it basically sent a request to a web address,
Yeah.
a gist on GitHub.
A gist.
Yeah, it's like a little snippet of code that you can store on GitHub.
Okay.
And that gist contained the actual malicious code, which was designed to find and publish those worker secrets.
So it was like a two-stage attack.
Yeah, they kind of hid the real payload.
Very clever.
Not clever enough, though, because it got caught.
Right. And hopefully the damage was limited.
Yeah. But if you're using the TJ Actions Change Files GitHub action, you need to rotate your secrets right away.
Definitely. Even if you weren't directly affected by this compromise, it's a good reminder to regularly rotate your secrets.
Absolutely. Just good security hygiene.
Yeah, and I think this whole story really highlights how important supply chain security is.
Right.
Because attackers are realizing that it's often easier to compromise a widely used component.
Than it is to attack individual targets.
Exactly. So you have to be really careful about what third-party tools and libraries you're using.
And make sure you're keeping them up to date.
Definitely.
So yeah, it's been a busy week in the world of tech security.
It has.
A lot of stuff going on.
A lot to keep track of.
But hopefully we've kind of broken it down in a way that makes sense.
Yeah. Hopefully people feel a little more informed.
Yeah, and maybe a little more motivated to stay on top of their own security.
It's definitely complacency is the enemy.
So thanks for tuning in to Byte-Sized Tech.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
If you enjoyed this little deep dive, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff.
We appreciate your support.
And we'll see you next time
See you next time.
for more fun tech discussions.
Stay safe out there.
Bye.
Bye.